Good afternoon, fellow alumni and friends. It's 1 p.m. and we're going to go ahead and get started. Give me 1 second. I'll be doing double duty here. So welcome to St. Rose's Alumni Association bi-monthly fireside chat. Back in March, our session was focused on making the transition from expat to repat easy in Guyana. We had Fazal Yusuf, Advisor Investment and Diaspora Affairs from the Guyana Consulate in New York, and Roslyn Rasul, who's the head of Diaspora Affairs. They shared their knowledge and expertise on the laws, procedures, documentation, and requirements for repatriation. Today, we have a panel that will give us firsthand knowledge and experience in truly navigating the real estate market from the three different perspectives. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read their entire bios. However, they will have the opportunity to further introduce themselves during their presentation time. First, I would like to introduce Ms. Angela Trenton-Mbonde. She has an accomplished career spanning over 30 years with the United Nations system. She has served in senior capacities in Africa, the Caribbean, Geneva, Switzerland, and New York. Her last posting was in Guyana. She holds a master's in health services management and policy from George Washington University and studied at the Geneva School of Diplomacy and International Relations in Switzerland. She retired in 2023 and remigrated to Guyana in April of 2024. I'm admitting, guys. Next, we have Rawle Adams. And Rawle is a real estate professional with a diverse background that blends over 20 years of IT experience. He has a solid foundation in project management and a passion for real estate. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science from the University of Guyana and a master's degree in project management from the University of the West Indies. He worked as a project manager for GTT, now One Communication, and is a certified project manager. He's the owner and founder of Projects Unlimited and Real Estate 2020. He is serving as the interim management committee president of the Guyana Association of Real Estate Professionals. Next is Raymond McMillan. Most of you know Raymond. He is a retired mortgage professional and current real estate investor and consultant with a career spanning 4 decades in the investment, banking, lending industry, and real estate industry. He has a degree in geography and economics from the University of Guyana. Having worked in the financial industry for several years, he opened the McMillan Group in November of 1999. He's an experienced real estate investor who has tremendous insight on several Caribbean markets and parts of Florida. I will let him fill in the rest of his extensive experience that is relative to our conversation today. The process is we'll have Angela first, and then we'll have Rawle and then Ray. If you have any questions, please place those questions in the chat, and we will have an opportunity after their presentation for them to answer any questions that you may have. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Angela.
Good afternoon, friends, colleagues. Greetings from beautiful Guyana. The real estate market in Guyana is exploding and it's exciting. And this afternoon, you will receive valuable tips from the panel about how to navigate the real estate market in Guyana. As you've heard, I'm Angela Trenton-Mbonde, and just wanted to correct one thing, that my last posting was in Ghana, and not Guyana. And of course, we always mixed up Guyana and Ghana. So to participate in this exciting process of the real estate, navigating the real estate market, you need to be in Guyana. And so I've remigrated, and I will first of all, discuss that process with you. And many of you have already heard some of it from the panel last week. So I will not say too much about that unless you have some specific questions about that. So delighted to share my experience, and there's an application form that is available online, um, which really outlines the process. And just very briefly to say, you have to, first of all, request an interview with the Office of Migrant Unit, the officer there who is very, very friendly and welcoming. That's how I felt. Um, you have that interview is important because you have to confirm your eligibility and be clear about the documents that are required. So you submit the documents, you ship your items to Guyana, you attend an interview with the GRA officer, that's the Guyana Revenue Authority. You obtain a broker and you clear your shipment. You make sure that you do all the payments, and then you arrange for the delivery at home. So I'm going to tell you some of the lessons that I learned from this process. First of all, it's important to ensure that the document package is complete. This is the package that you have to submit to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. 2 copies plus the originals. This could be a very tedious process, and I wasted a lot of time in the beginning because I didn't have all the complete package and all the required copies. So, but the staff was very patient, I have to say, very patient with me. Among the documents to be submitted is a list of the items that you are shipping, and invoices from the for the purchase of your vehicle. I would say please ensure that your list is complete. Try to remember everything that you bring, because once it's approved, you'll not be able to add additional documents. And if you're making 2 or more shipments, like I did, I shipped from Ghana and I shipped from the United States. You ensure that you make this very clear to the broker. How it's entered into the portal is important, because if it's all put together as one shipment, you will have problems when the first one comes in, and then you want the other one to come in, you will have a lot of problems. So make sure that this is separated. It's also important to have a dedicated broker to relieve you of the hassle of navigating that system of customs and clearing and so on. And I had 2 different experiences. The second one was better than the first. And avoid paying the demurrage charges, the storage, if your shipment is late, or if you're late in processing your shipment. It takes approximately 5 to 6 weeks for the whole process. Once your application is approved by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and GRA, then you will have 6 months to clear your personal effects. So try to align the arrival of your shipment with the approval. If for some reason your shipment is delayed, for example, there are a lot of challenges with supply chain. The deadline could be extended by 2 weeks. GRA could decide to do that, but only when there's evidence that your shipment is arriving. So you don't just extend it for 2 weeks without knowing that, okay, my shipment will arrive at a certain date. Then you will get the 2 weeks. So that's when you apply for the extension. And then for the delivery of the shipment to your house, ensure that the container, the truck that is carrying the container, can actually access your street. Because I had a problem there, because where I live, the streets are narrow. And so, and actually the broker should have come before to see, to investigate and see whether the truck can pass in, but he didn't do that. And then, so they had to park on another street and get a smaller vehicle to offload and then come to my place. Of course, the charges will go up for that. So that's important. So I I'm not going to go on very long. I want to stop here in terms of that process for you to ask questions. But I believe that in addition to these attractive benefits which the Ministry of Foreign Affairs offers, it is also essential to consider how you will spend your time. You know, if you've been living abroad and like me, doing a lot of stuff, now what am I going to do to have a sense of purpose, you know, to have meaning to my life? So what I've decided to do is, even before I left Ghana, my last study station, I established a project, my own project and my own nonprofit. And I am remotely managing this project, which is providing alternative livelihoods to women and girls who feel trapped in sex work. This is in Ghana. So I also want to do something similar in Guyana, or extend that to more broadly to women and girls in vulnerable situations and the help that they need. I've also established a fashion line called Angela Dawn, High Fashion with a Conscience, which is a fusion of African, Asian, Western, and Caribbean styles, fabrics, and production techniques. So in conclusion, with these attractive benefits and activities that you plan for yourself, you can settle down, enjoy the beauty of Guyana, and then navigate the opportunities in the booming real estate market in Guyana. And I'm open for questions later or now.
I have a question for you, Angela. When you got to Guyana, did you rent a home, or did you have a family home there? Like, what was that experience like, coming from, you know, more sophisticated type living environments, going back into Guyana? What was that experience like for you?
Yes, I had a home because I worked with the UN system. And so Guyana was always my home away, you know, which was my home. So I came on home leave, but I was still considered a non-resident because I had residency in the places where I worked. And that's one of the documents that you have to show. You have to show that you actually had legal residence somewhere else in order to be able to remigrate. So I have a house, but my challenge though is that the house that I have a 2-flat, it was for my mother, and now I want to retire and have a big place. And the prices are astronomical. So I'm still looking, and this is where I think maybe the government can help. They're saying that you have to be, you have to have not own a house, you know, in order to benefit from the land that they're giving out. So they're not considering you as a migrant wanting to do different things and needing a bigger space. Something I think to look into, that even if you have a home that might be in a family home, you need something more than that. So I'm still looking for that kind of space that I need now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll turn it over now to Rawle, who would talk to us a little bit from the real estate perspective in his role.
Thanks much, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for having me. So first of all, let me just say that today I was between a rock and a hard place as to where I sit to conduct this panel discussion. My preference was at home. It's Saturday, but Saturday is a day when my dogs choose to behave bad, so they were allowed. So I came down to my office. So I'm apologizing in advance because today, for some reason, all the minibuses seem to be taking this route. So if you hear some background noises, horns, and so on, welcome to Guyana. This sometimes.
So we're getting the experience.
That's a good problem to have, Rawle. When there was noise in the background, that's a nice problem, man.
No, not at all. All right, so thanks for the introduction earlier. Claire was stated, I am, well, we call it in Guyana, a real estate professional. We try to stay away from the term realtor because that is trademarked by, I think, the National Association of Realtors in the United States or in North America. I'm mostly from an IT project management background, and as such, I am more of the backroom kind of guy, but real estate has brought me into a new light, a new realm, which I am enjoying. So let's talk a little bit about real estate. And first, I just think I should draw a line that it exists, but it's kind of a gray area, because when persons get into conversations about real estate, then the conversation many times go back and forth between two different industries, which is the real estate industry and the construction industry, which are two distinctly different industries, even though they're they're interdependent, but they're completely two different industries. What I want to focus on here is more of the real estate industry and where we are with it, where the industry is in Guyana. In August of 2023, just to give some context as to where we are, the Act, the Real Estate Agent and Brokers Act, which is Act number 7 of 2023, was passed. And that act and the intention of that act was to regularize the real estate industry. So even though it's an old profession, it was never regularized. So you know what gives when you have an existing profession for 40, 50 years, and then you regularize it now. It takes some time for all the players to come into line and to have all the policies and systems in place. So we're at that junction where the legislative part of the real estate industry is a work in progress, which makes it a little, I wouldn't say tricky, but a little more difficult had it been regularized before, because of course, with the advent of oil and the oil boom, real estate market has taken off, and it has taken off in every direction possible, good, bad, indifferent. So navigating the real estate industry in Guyana is something that you need to pay keen attention to. And you can make this as simple as you want it to, or as difficult as you want it to. It just depends on your approach. So let's talk the first step in real estate in Guyana. It is deciding what your interest is, what your intent is when you approach or when you get into the real estate discussion. What are you intending to do? Are you interested in buying? Are you interested in selling, renting or leasing? Is it property management? That's the first decision. I know it seems, but I'm assuming here that most of you are living overseas, maybe considering remigrating to Guyana. Maybe you have property here. Maybe you just tested the market to see what can be had if you can afford your interest. So we start off with what interest do you have? And then once you've identified that interest, if you're looking to buy a property, then we can take the discussion down the line of what kind of property are you looking for? What's the intent for the property? Is it for personal use, residential property? Is it for business? Is it an investment property? Are you trying to secure building? Are you trying to secure land? Are you trying to secure building? 1 second, please. Building and land. Yeah, what the intent is. And then where do you want to do this? Where do you want this property to be located? You know, location is everything. What is your preference? As you know, as in every place, there are issues surrounding where you want to be. Because of course, there are the good areas, there are the what we call the ghetto areas or the questionable areas. But then there's also, let's say, if this is an investment property, what are the best zones to place your investment? Right now, Georgetown, Lower East Coast, those are the areas that are on the uptake, the high demand areas. And then there are the other areas like early East Bank, Berbice and Linden, they're now up and coming with the development. So if you're not interested in an investment property and you're looking for maybe personal home, then where do you prefer to live? Do you want to live in a gated community? Do you want to live in the suburbs, in the city? Where do you want to settle? Or maybe if you have a property, what is your intent with that property? Are you intending to renovate this property? Do you want to dispose of this property? Or you just want to have it there as a family vacation home? Do you want to put it on the market for rental? And it's decisions that you need to consider, or points that you need to consider before you make your final decision. Then you think about your timeline. How soon do you want to get into this? How soon do you want to buy? When? When do you want to renovate? Is this an immediate need? Is this futuristic investment? What is the reason for the investment? And then the big thing is the budget. What do you intend to spend? How much can you afford? If it's an investment, then you're going to start thinking about your returns on your investment. How do you intend to fund this investment, or this purchase, or this repair, this renovation to put back on the market? Or if it's just a family home, is it a single family? Is it a multi-use, multi-family home, multi-use, where you live in a part of it and you monetize another part of it? All these are decisions that should consume you once you think about doing real estate or getting involved in buying, selling in Guyana. I wanted to pause here just in case there's any questions before I take this a little further.
I have a question. What is the typical average cost per square foot, say in Georgetown, compared to other areas on the residential and commercial end?
What are we talking for? Building?
Building.
All right. So the bank, I'll give you what the bank, let's see. If you're borrowing from the bank, they do it on an average of $12,000 to $15,000 per square foot. And that's it for residential properties. Of course, it depends on...
Excuse me, sir. You got an American audience. You got to give us in U.S. currency.
Oh.
That sounds like a lot of money for some people. So you got to convert it into USD. In God's
I figured that was 600 to 750.
Yeah, no, but I figured out also, but I wanted to...
Yeah, good point.
12,000 to 15,000. So that's 60 to 75 US per square foot.
Okay.
I don't know, Ray, what is the per square foot cost in North America? And how that compares?
It varies. I mean, each zip code is different. Each neighborhood is different. Right. I mean, even I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. I mean, where I live, it's about $300 per square foot. Where I invest is about $100 a square foot. I lived in Toronto for a very long time. For those who know, in Toronto, it's about probably $1,000+ a square foot. I got a colleague here on the call from Toronto. He could probably tell you what the numbers are. So, yeah, it's a very different set of numbers here in this part of the world when it comes to price per square foot, and it depends on zip code, postal code, and location.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions for Rawle before?
I got a quick question for Rawle. I mean, as overseas, as a Guyanese in the diaspora, if you were starting to thinking of going back to Guyana to buy or rent, how do you access properties? Like, where do you go to search for real estate?
Right.
Because like here in North America, you can go to the MLS system, you can go to Zillow.com, you can go to Realtor.com, Redfin. But like, if I want to find a property in a particular neighborhood in Guyana or any one of the 10 regions, where do I go before I call a realtor to just get an idea of what's out there in the market?
Right. And that because we don't have here a multi-listing system that you can go and search, what we recommend is You use your online platforms like the web, do property finding on the web. You check the local newspapers. You know, we have the classified ads, and every week they list a set of properties there. You can do some networking, you know, calling a friend, someone who maybe would have purchased lately, a family member. The other option is you can do a visit. You come home, you spend a month, you move around, you check the areas, you see, think about where you like to live. You look at do some comps as to what it will cost to live in this area and so on. There are market trends that you can research, but top of that, of all of that, is find yourself a real estate professional to do that search for you.
Okay, thank you, Rawle.
Thanks, Rawle. Raymond?
Thanks, Claire. Some of you may know me. I have spent 4 decades in the real estate space, probably longer. It's part of my DNA. For full disclosure, Rawle and I have a professional business in Guyana. I am also a member of GARP. I am a realtor associate in Guyana. I work with my partner, Rawle. We're also close friends. My journey in the real estate started when I was like around 6 years old. I watched my grandfather build a 2-story, 3-bedroom family home and convert it into a 3-story, 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom home that he more or less designed himself. I watched him fire contractors in the middle of the process and hire new teams. I was 6 or 7 years old. So I've got a very good approach to doing real estate. I started my own investment company, mortgage company, back in the 90s in Toronto, Canada. My son currently runs it. I've lived throughout the Caribbean, spent a lot of time in St. Lucia. My father's Grenadian, so I spent a lot of time in Grenada. I've got the Bajan business and Jamaican business partners. I did a lot of business in Jamaica and Barbados. My first foray into working with people in the diaspora started around the early 2000s when a lot of Jamaicans were going back to Jamaica. And one of the challenges they had, which Rawle alluded to earlier in this conversation, is that if you came from a simple environment where you grew up and you spent 30 years in North America and attained some level of success, it was very challenging to go back to those environments and build the biggest house in the poorest neighborhood. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And the other challenge a lot of them had is that most times when they went home for vacation, they stayed in resorts. They didn't stay in a regular home. So they had a very skewed perspective of what life was like going back there full time. And Angela mentioned the same thing also. Like, what do you do when you go back to these places after having a very healthy career spanning 30+ years in North America or other parts of the world? Like, how do you fit in? So my position over the last 25 years was advising clients on that transition. What do you do when you get back there? And as Rawle mentioned, what, where, when, and how do you buy, right? Going back where you came from is nostalgic. It doesn't always make sense. You want to find yourself in an environment where there are similar people around you. And then you have to also decide whether you're going to buy a home or build a home. Buying sometimes makes more sense because it's easier, but building becomes more personal. And I'm going to speak on the building part of it because the buying part, Rawle can speak up. I'm going to speak on the building part. So my mom is Guyanese, for those of you who don't know. So I'm not fully Guyanese, but I'm Guyanese for the conversation piece. My last trip to Guyana, so I didn't visit Guyana a lot. I was last there in 2006, and the experience wasn't pleasant. The city was a mess. It wasn't what I expected. And I went back there in 2017 for a funeral, and I fell in love with Guyana all over again. And I've been going there consistently since then and spending extended periods of time. In 2022, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, my wife has a family property there, and her mom asked me to go back and do some construction. So I did a ground up build in Guyana. If you travel to the Caribbean a lot, you will see a lot of half-finished properties in the Caribbean. Anywhere you go to Barbados, you go to Antigua, you're going to see homes that are, somebody had a grand idea and they home is half finished. They didn't, either ran out of money, they probably passed away before they finished the home, or they just, the project is dragging on for extended period of time. I did the project in Guyana in 3 months, start to finish, 500 square feet. I was there every single day. So going back to Guyana, if you plan to build your home, commit yourself to spend extended periods of time in Guyana to manage the project yourself. You have to understand drawings. You don't have to be an architect, you have to understand drawings. You have to understand construction. You have to understand cost overruns. You have to understand how to manage the workforce. You have to understand where to find items to buy in Guyana. So I'll share the mistakes I made. The first mistake I made was putting the utmost confidence in the local contractor, that he knew what he was doing. Now, and I don't want to sound classist here, but a contractor in North America is most likely living in a pretty decent home in North America. A contractor in Guyana might not be living in the same type of home that you were accustomed to living in here in North America and plan to build in Guyana. So right away, there's a learning curve. So many of your basic amenities, like a powder room or a walk-in pantry or soft touch doors, might not be something that your contractor understands, readily understands. So my first error was making the assumption that he knew what I was talking about when I laid out my parameters. The second mistake I made was having the contractor buy the stuff for me. Now, everything I bought in Guyana, and there was no theft involved. There was no robbery involved. So I'm not going to, say that though. They're very honest gentleman, but I allowed him to buy the stuff for me. And his states, so again, I'm very careful with my words. The trend in Guyana today for many people who are building is shiny stuff. If it looks shiny, then it's nice. I'm not interested in shiny stuff. I'm interested in quality and well-made items. So what they found nice, I didn't find nice. Like, even things like bathroom tiles. They want shiny bathroom tiles. I like matte finishes. When the light shines, I don't want to see a reflection. I want it to absorb the light rather than reflect the light, if that makes sense. So what I should have done before I started the project was spend 2 months in Guyana talking to folks like Rawle who are in the business and get a list of all the people who sell stuff. So I know so from the ground up, you need to get your foundation done. We didn't need a foundation, so that wasn't part. Well, we had to do some work on the foundation, but it's a whole new foundation. So you want to find out who has the best price and the best quality cement, because there's cement and there's cement. And if you buy inferior quality cement, you will actually end up spending more money buying more bags of cement. So you want to price your stuff. So my foundation, I need cement. I need my steel rods. You price those. I need my exterior walls. I need concrete blocks. You got 4-inch blocks. You got 6-inch blocks. Now, there's a price difference. But if you've got an exterior bathroom that you plan to put a shelf inside your bathroom, the bathroom goes to the exterior wall, then you need 6-inch blocks. You can't use 4-inch blocks because you can't cut the block now, right? So I didn't know those things because this was my first rodeo. So I spent a lot of time having the contractor take stuff back. Once I got the hang of where to buy and what to buy, the process became very, very easy. Now, the cost of materials is not significantly more than the cost of materials in North America. And you can find almost every single brand of items in Guyana. You can find Pfister faucets, you can find Schlag doors, you can find Moen faucets, you can find all the ceiling fans and fixtures. So for me, it made more sense to buy locally because I want to get a project built as fast as possible than having stuff shipped in and waiting to clear stuff and all that kind of stuff. Now, we did ship some of the stuff in from the US. What we did ship in was the front door lock and the kitchen faucet. Everything else was bought locally. Managing your construction team, if you're not familiar with construction, I suggest you get a project manager. You know, do-it-yourself construction is not something you want to do if you have no experience in the construction space. When you get a quote from a builder or a contractor, you want to get everything broken down by category. So, and I give you the categories. Your first category is your foundation. How much is it going to cost to get this foundation? Now, if you're building a bungalow, you've got one type of foundation, it's going to cost you one thing. You're building a two-story home, it's going to cost something totally different. Now, if you're using blocks in your interior, then you need a better foundation than if you're using drywall in your interior, because the foundation has to be able to hold that entire structure. So you have to decide from the get-go, are you going to use interior concrete blocks on your construction or drywall, or what they call, what's the word they use in Guyana, Rawle? I call it drywall here in this part of the world, and there's another term they use in Guyana. But you get, sheetrock, sorry, thank you, right? So you get your foundation done. You get your exterior walls done, right? Your exterior walls in your roof, and then you get your windows and your doors put in. And you want to price every single part of that process. Then you get your plumbing and your electrical. You get full coats. Now, and I share a story with you. So I like outlets. Any room I'm in has to have at least 6 outlets. In Guyana, most rooms got one switch, one outlet. And the electrician gave me a quote. He gave me a quote based on his experience building Guyana, not my reality. So my house, the house in Guyana has about probably 100 outlets in it. There's like 8 in the kitchen, right? And I knew that the quote he gave me wasn't enough for the amount of work that I needed. So when he was halfway through, he came to me and says, "Boss man, this money you're not gonna do, I gotta charge you more." I said, "I understand that, but give me a number." But now, because he underquoted me, he was reluctant now to change his quote halfway through. But I'm in the construction space. I know that your numbers don't make any sense, right? So you've got to let them know that before you start, that this is not a 8 outlet home. This is a 50 outlet home. So make sure you get your quote right, so you're not changing numbers halfway through. If your money is limited, you're in a limited budget, and your desired bill and what the contractor and the tradespeople are seeing don't coincide, then you're going to find yourself in a problem. And that's why you hear a lot of people complaining that, "Oh, I'm being robbed by the contractor." And I agree, sometimes that happens in some cases, but many times there's a miscommunication between or different expectations between what you were trying to build and what they think you were trying to build, right? There's a big difference. And then after you finish your plumbing and your electrical, you want your interior finishes. So you want everything broken down by those categories. Now your interior finishes, depending on what your taste is, can be the most expensive part of that construction process, because that's not your light fixtures, your faucets, the quality of your paint, whether you use quartz or granite in your kitchen, the quality of your floor tiles, and you price everything individually. And here's the cherry on the top. Your escalation cost in Guyana is extremely high. The longer you take to build, the more expensive every single thing is going to get for you. So the faster you can finish your project, the less it's going to cost you. So if you budgeted $100,000 to your construction, if the quote that the builder gives you, sorry, is $100,000 to your construction, I suggest to you that your overrun cost is between 15 and 20%, because you're not going to finish that property. Because things are increasing at such a tremendous value. Right? Just even being there in the 3-month period, right? Every time you go to get cement, the price changes. Every time you go to get blocks, the price changes. You know what I mean? So you've got to make sure that you have a very clean spreadsheet of what your current price is, and then you put that 50 to 20% price overrun. So in the event that the price changes, you've got your actual budget and your possible budget, and you've got to build a spreadsheet. That is very important. You've got to build a spreadsheet itemizing the 5 construction categories, right? 5 construction categories. And you put every item under there, and you want to update your spreadsheet weekly, and then you keep your labor costs separate. So you've got your masons, you've got your basic laborers, you've got your carpenters, you got your electricians, you got your roofing guy, and you've got your plumber, right? And then once you finish all of that, you got the guys who can put in your security system. You can't forget that part of the conversation. You have your cameras and your security system, which most times can be accessed remotely. The price of the security systems is very similar to North America. And again, everything can be bought locally in Guyana. There's a lot of folks who can install that stuff without a problem, but having that spreadsheet is very important. And you want to update it weekly. Also have a system of paying your laborers. Now, I didn't pay the laborers directly. I didn't hire the laborers. The contractor hired the laborers. Every week he would give me his number. I would pay the contractor, and he paid the laborers. The only person I paid directly was the electrician, because in my mind, I needed him going forward to do other stuff for me. So I built with him a very personal relationship. If I need something done, I need wiring done outside the house, I can call him and say, listen, I need to put an outside plug on the front porch, so I can now have that. But with the other laborers, particularly the masons and stuff, a lot of the guys are temporary, right? I mean, once the guys finish doing the foundation, they're not really coming back to the site again. The guy who's laying on your hardwood floors, once he finishes putting the floors, he's not coming back to do anything else. Or he might do your closets and your pantries. The guy who's the tiler is not coming back to put down baseboard trim and that sort of stuff. So I didn't need to develop a very personal relationship with those individuals, but I did it with the contractor, and he managed the relationship between the laborers themselves. And you got to be very, very, very strict with the local crew. There's a thing here that gangs are always late. Well, I don't buy that. If I need to know what time you want to come, I need to know exactly how you plan to work every day. Are you gonna be there at 9 in the morning or 8 in the morning? How late you plan to work? And that's our work schedules. We work on an 8:30 shift to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. What I did to make my day go faster and to get a confidence of the workers, I arranged meals for the guys so they didn't have to leave to go and buy food and come back. Find somebody to cook. It's not expensive. You cook some fried fish, you get some styrofoam containers and you feed the workers, you know what I mean? That way they're not leaving the site now to go and find food and come back 2 hours later. So my primary focus is that I need to get this job done as quickly as possible from A to Z. I know that was a whole lot, but if you got any questions for me, throw them out. I will try my very, very best to answer them.
Good, good information. Question, and I don't know if this is to Rawle or Raymond. Is there a home builders association in Guyana where they have all the home builders on there, similar to what you're doing with the real estate professionals? Is there a similar organization?
I can answer, not to my knowledge. I don't know if Rawle knows about anything else.
Sorry, Ray. I didn't get your answer. What you said?
I said not to my knowledge. I didn't see anything
correct.
of that nature.
Correct. No, there isn't a home builders association. There is an association of professional engineers, but it's not the same as the home builders association. Because this is where the engineers they discuss more engineering kind of issues. Yes, but
Okay.
yeah, we don't have that here.
Rawle, there's a question in the chat for you. And this question is from, I think it's Brion Richard. He said, what is the real estate market like in Success, especially for investment opportunities?
In which area?
Success.
Oh,
Okay.
Success, that's on the East Coast. So the zone that what we call the high income zone, because I'm thinking here that you're asking because you're looking at an investment property. It lies between a little before Lusignan down to Ogle. That's the preferred zone. I think Success is just outside of that, if I remember correctly. So I was asked that question, I think, what's it, Ray, I think we had a gentleman who was interested in building, doing something at Success.
That is correct, yeah. He has
Right.
some land up there.
Yeah, so Success, you will not get the high rentals that if you're thinking income generating top of the line property. You may not get the pull in Success because that was more like middle to low income. If you're looking to attract like the Exxon Mobil kind of clientele, no, you got to come a little bit closer down to Oval. If that answers the question.
Is he on? Leon, did that answer your question?
He said yes, it does, yeah.
Oh, you did. Okay, cool. Awesome. Any other question? Well, I have a question.
Actually, so before you go, Claire, there's a direct question here that's not showing up came directly to me from one of our listeners.
Okay.
How did I find the contractor? The contractor was a family friend. That's one of the challenges in Guyana, finding the right contractor. You know, a lot of the contractors locally have learned the trade from a father or grandfather. So very few have gone to GTI and gotten a certificate. There's a hesitancy today for young trade people to go to GTI. None of the guys who worked for me, except for the electrician, had any sort of certification. None of them. So you've got to really screen your contractor. And I don't want to see pictures on your cell phone. I actually want to come to houses you were built, the permission of the person who owns the property, and walk through that property. Because I can look at finishing and tell you whether it's good quality or it's crap. You know, a lot of stuff looks nice in photographs. I mean, I'm a real estate investor. I know to make crap look good, right? All it needs is a nice paint job and basic 3-inch trim on your baseboard, and anything can look nice, and a few doors change. But you know, when I look at you know, when I put a marble in the floor, I roll across the place, I know your floor is not level, right? Or I can push a window up and it doesn't and gets stuck, meaning that your window frame is not installed properly. So you know, it's not a DIY type stuff trying to build in Guyana. You know, Rawle's a project manager, and there are many other people in Guyana who I know who are engineers by profession who manage projects. So one of the first things you want to do is, ask them to see if they can take you to properties that they've actually worked on, and see what it looks like. I mean, one of the hardest things that I've seen in Guyana for a lot of guys to build is nice kitchens. They have no idea how to design a kitchen properly, because in North America, the kitchen is like the heart of the home. You got expansive counters and islands and bar stools and that kind of stuff. The kitchen in Guyana for most people is a place where you cook, and they don't spend any time in there. So the kitchen down the back of the house, the one that is the darkest, hottest spot of the house in most Guyanese homes, right? So you've got to really sit down and work with them, like their kitchen size. And it's not hard to find plans online. You can buy a plan online for like $50. You just go and look for a kitchen plan. If your home is 2,000 square feet, you just Google adequate size kitchen for a 2,000 square foot home, and you're going to find hundreds of plans based on your layout, and just print the plan. And if you have any problem understanding length and width and stuff like that, send it to me. I'll tell you how big that kitchen is. A 12 by 10 foot kitchen is actually a pretty big kitchen. 8 by 6 is not too bad based on the layout. But yeah, you've got to do a lot of screening with the contractors, and make sure that the contractor is also paying the guys when you pay him. Because a lot of the contractors don't pay the workers properly. Some of the contractors, I shouldn't say a lot, some of them don't do it. And then you end up in a problem where you come downstairs or get to your project, and half the guys don't show up because they haven't been paid by the contractor. Meanwhile, you've paid the contractor, right? So you've got to have very serious conversations with these folks in Guyana to let them know that this is not a pappy show. I'm here for a particular period of time. Like me, I had to leave actually. And I told the guys, I'm leaving here at a certain time. Let's say I'm leaving here next week, Tuesday. And if this work is not done by Saturday, then you guys gonna pay for my plane ticket back to America. It's that simple. Because you told me you're gonna finish at a certain time, and you know 4 days over. So I'm not paying for this plane ticket. You're gonna pay for the plane ticket. So you figure it out. And you have to have those kind of conversations, unless they're gonna push you all around the place, man.
Wow. Okay, thanks, Raymond. Another question. Is it safe to assume residential properties are signed off by inspectors for people wanting to purchase a resale in Guyana? I see laughter. Rawle and Raymond both laughing. Candid conversation.
Rawle, you wanna so my experience, building in Guyana is a free-for-all. Right. You get your plans drawn up, you get your plans approved, and then once it's approved, you can do whatever the hell you want after that.
Yes.
And that's just the reality, right?
Yeah.
There's no inspector coming to inspect. Like I've done construction in North America, and at every single stage, the inspector comes and signs off. And if something is done wrong, you gotta rip everything out at your own expense and start over. And they're not gonna sign off on it. You know, like we were doing a construction project for a client here in Toronto. We were doing the financing part of it. And my son was working with a client. And they had like 8 months to get the permits approved. That's not Guyana. However, what I would suggest you do is get your electrical approved in Guyana. Do not mess around with that stuff. Electrical fires are very frequent in the country. If it's not done properly, you may find yourself in a problem, and I hope you don't. We got the electrical inspected. I got every step of my electrical inspected to make sure there was the right size cables being used. And I'm going to say it again, if you've never built a house in North America, do not go to Guyana by yourself and try to build a home. You're going to spend a lot of money doing things over and over and over. Find somebody who understands the process, who's either done it themselves before with some level of success, or find a project manager. So get the electrical inspection done. That's very, very important. That electrical meter comes to your home. You know, we got all kind of power surges in Guyana. You hear that wire singing sometimes. So you want to get your inspection done properly.
Yes, and Ray, just backing up what you said, with the electrical certification, before GPL give you your final meter and final connection, because of course you get a temporary connection during your construction, your electricals must be certified by a certified electrician. Prior to that, the MDC would give you certification once you submit your plan to go ahead. They link with fire as well, the MNCC, water. But outside of that, from the time you get that first go ahead certification that your plan is approved to build, to the point where you're looking for electricals and certification for electricals, it's you and your contractor.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to find a good contractor, but equally important to find a good project manager or construction manager, especially if you're overseas, because you being absent, especially for extended periods, you may not be happy with what you get at the end of your spending.
Yeah, I mean, my advice to anybody who's going to spend a month in Guyana at a time, when you leave, shut the project up. Don't leave any family member today. I've heard horror stories, not only in Guyana, but throughout the entire Caribbean. If people have left the family members, like I've got a client who bought a place in South Rhineville 15 years ago, sent $50,000 to an uncle, and there's no work done in the houses yet. You know, it's still falling down. You know what I mean? So it is your investment. It is your life savings. It is your dream. Don't put it in anybody else's hand unless you pay in that consultant or project manager to do it. I've got another question here from somebody in the audience. They're asking about theft of materials. I didn't have any theft, but I'm Guyanese, right? Don't forget, I got this in Georgia, so you can't thief from me, right? I don't know what you guys on the call, but I'm still very, very Guyanese, you know. Our environment was very, very secure. We had a padlock gate, and when everybody left, everything was inside. There was a room downstairs that had a lot of the materials that couldn't go into the home, and then the stuff like the locks and the stuff. So I never showed them what they didn't need to use until they needed to use it, right? If you got expensive locks for your doors, but you haven't installed your doors as yet, then your tradespeople don't need to know what kind of locks you have because some may go missing, right? So as you need something, I bring it out. You need to install the fans, I bring it out. You need to install the light fixtures, I bring it out. So I didn't create an opportunity for theft. Because most theft is opportunistic. I don't think people say they're going to rob somebody today. But if you leave something around somebody to take it that you don't need for another 3 months, that they think you might not miss when you're ready to use it, they will take it. But no, I didn't have any problems with theft. The sand and the bricks were outside. But then, I was in an area where everybody around me we were probably the last person to do construction in that street. So most of the people who lived around me, around us, had already repatriated and had built their nice homes. And that's what I said earlier. You don't want to go back and build the biggest house in a poor neighborhood because you may have problems because you are now, the king of the territory, right? But if you're building in an area where everybody's already started building their stuff and you all the same equal footing they've all lived overseas, then there's less opportunity that you're going to find people stealing your stuff and, everybody got cameras in their home and that kind of stuff. So it's a lot easier to go through the process.
We have another question. Thanks, Raymond.
Excuse me. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'm calling in.
Oh,
I
okay.
just want to rewind a bit. Ray spoke about your kitchen would be different from what you expect. But isn't there an architect who would make the plan before so you could see exactly where you have your kitchen or where you want to put a kitchen, and it wouldn't be left up to the contractor when the house is actually being built? I'm thinking there's a difference between architect and contractor. There's
a difference between architect and contractor, but I also said that most people can plan properly. A lot of the contractors, they're not great plan readers. So you can have your kitchen nicely designed on paper, but to build it and then to finish it, right? You want your sink in a certain position. You want, like the average space for a stove. For example, the average space for something is 32 inches, if I'm correct. Standard size for a stove.
30.
But 30 inches? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you got an inch on each side, that's 32. You just slide it. You get space now, right? If you buy a 36-inch stove, because it's now got the built-in griddle, and your contractor has only seen 30-inch stoves, and you ship your stove in, you got a problem, right? So there's a lot of, it's not incompetencies. It's just we have different things we buy in North America, even your fridge. Yeah, like we had the same problem, right? When I measured for the fridge, and when the fridge came, I'm like, holy smoke, this fridge can't fit in this spot. So now I had to sort of reconfigure the kitchen to make the fridge fit, right? And it looked good because now I changed that spot that I was going to use as a counter. I made it a spot for the microwave. So it looked as though it was designed for that purpose, but it was a mistake. Right? It was a huge glaring mistake, you know what I mean? But yeah, so if you understand measurements, you understand, kitchen design or any kind of housing design, you want to sit down and look at that. And if you're in North America, right, what I would suggest you do is go to any new building site and walk through one of their pre-construction properties and get a sense of what that kitchen looks like. So if you got a 14 by 10 kitchen with an island in the center or your sink in the center, what it looks like. So you can know you have a visual, take a photograph of it, and when you go to Guyana, you tell your team in Guyana, this is what it looks like. Like when we did a walk-in pantry, and these guys had never built a walk-in pantry before. And Nilini had to send me photographs of our pantry here in Florida, right? And a video, and I spent about 2 days trying to explain to these guys how to build a walk-in pantry. What I eventually did, I said, hold on, guys, stop. I took the concrete blocks and I had to actually outline the pantry with the blocks. I said, okay, build it from here. And I'll figure out the rest. I'll tell you how to do the rest as we go ahead. They couldn't figure out how to build the pantry because it was an angle and they were totally confused.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to comment.
Angela, I was going to ask you a question. Are you going to ask your question, Angela?
Okay, and then I could answer at the same time about what he was talking about. Okay.
Okay, so Angela's question is the East Coast still attractive in spite of the threat of floods? And is the East Bank just as appealing for expats? And which areas? Rawle, you got that?
Yes, sure. So yes, the East Coast is still attractive in spite of the floods. The floods are not as prevalent as they used to be. Of course, with all the new constructions, persons are building higher based on new building codes and so on. But more importantly, because ExxonMobil, who is the big player right now in the industry, with not just oil, but taking up all the real estate, and persons who are working with or in some way connected to the real Exxon, they're all, well, aligning themselves to the requirements that Exxon would put in terms of the way the construction should be. So now what we have in Guyana is what we call the Exxon friendly zones. And one of the zones, or one of the biggest zones for the Exxon friendly zone, is the East Coast. And that starts from just around the Ogle area, stretching just before Lusiknan. And that's where you find the properties with the highest rents are located. What used to be the big areas or the affluent areas back in the day, like the Lamaha Gardens and the Pashadni Garden and so on. The challenge that you have there is now that they're the, what you call the lesser privileged areas just behind them, like the Sophia and so on. And persons traverse those areas, they're susceptible to opportunistic crimes or incidents. And also, they are now catching up because a lot of new construction is taking place on the East Coast. And so persons are now renovating some of those. Back in the day, used to be the wow houses. They're now trying to catch up because those houses were built many years ago. And that was when you had a 3-bedroom house with 1 bath. And now it's 3 bedrooms, it's 3.5 baths. So there are a lot of construction going on in those areas, while the new build are mostly along the East Coast because Exxon, there's a preference. I know there's some say, and it needs some verification, that the US advises their citizens to be along the East Coast because of if there's incidents, it's easier to get them out. So all that factor into the East Coast still being the it place. The East Bank, on the other hand, there isn't much activity in terms of big businesses, oil businesses, and so on going that way, but it's developing slowly. So if you're between Georgetown, and not even between Georgetown, you got to get past Agricola. So like Eccles, there are other new build outs there. And there's also some what they call young professional schemes. And then there's some as well in Providence, New Providence, Elainsville. But it cuts just before, like just around the, it probably expands up to Diamond, but there aren't a lot of requests for high income properties along the East Bank as compared to the East Coast. If that answers the question, I hope.
What is Linden like in terms of when you're going to repatriate to Guyana? What is it like living in Linden today?
All right, so.
And I know you have a bias because you're a Linden boy, right?
Yeah, I'm Linden born and bred. But Linden is a shadow of what it used to be. And I can say this because there's no name that I will give. We rented a house to a Brazilian company, and that deal closed 3 days ago. And it's the highest rental that we've done in Linden to date. And that was for $1,700 US a month. I am going back to Linden on Tuesday to meet with a doctor who immigrated, built a really lovely house in one of the best neighborhoods in Linden. He now wants to sell or rent because he wants to be in Georgetown. He says he's lonely, it's boring, there's nothing to do, because
Wow.
that is what gives in Linden. There were some rentals, a little pickup in the rentals, because they're doing the road from Linden to Lethem, as well as there's some construction going on the Linden Bridge. So there are a lot of, well, fair amount of international workers and companies doing that piece of work. So there was a little uptake like early in the year, and there's still a little drizzle here and there. But generally, Linden is nice if you are from Linden, and you want to come back home, you want to build a nice house, and you want to live there and retire. But commercially, no, not as yet.
Okay, so we're at 2:06. I think we're going to wrap up now, unless there's one last question. If not, I'm going to ask you, we truly appreciate your participation. I want to thank Rawle, Angela, and Raymond for being our panelists today. A lot of really good information. I'm sure some of you have questions. I think you can reach out to them or reach out and we'll get you in put you in contact with either one of them. We would like your input on this session. So I dropped a link in the chat. If you can complete that short survey for us, we truly appreciate it. Again, thanks to the panel and thanks to all of you for attending another fireside chat with the St. Rose's Alumni Association. Thank you and have a great day. And to all mothers, happy Mother's Day.